Hey folks, Dust here, and I want to discuss Astralis winning the IEM Katowice major, the first major of 2019, this being their second major as a lineup, and of course the third major title for four of these members, namely Glaive, Dupree, Device, Zippix, and of course their coach Zonic. And this is just an additional chapter to the book of greatness that Astralis is writing right now as they become probably the best team of all time in CSGO. Again, at worst, maybe number two behind one of the Fnatic lineups that Pronax had way back in, like late 2014 to late 2015, because they just played more tournaments than this Astralis team has played. So more top four finishes, more titles, things of that nature. But this Astralis team now has four members with just as many majors as the players on that Fnatic lineup, and no one has won more than three majors so far. So, four of these players are in that category, and Magus with two, not many players have that as well. Plus, this team, of course, just has a slew of other top finishes, which we'll talk about a little bit later in assessing the greatness of this team, which is really something I want to tackle in this video alongside talking about the major itself. But just to go to the major itself, Astralis had a breeze through the Swiss system of this tournament. I mean, they opened up against Complexity, easy best of one victory there on Nuke. Somehow Complexity let that one through, so it's easy pickings for Astralis, just of course extending the amount of times they've won that map in a row as they edge closer and closer to getting towards NIP 32-0 record on Nuke, which is the, of course, longest map winning streak in CSGO land history. Astralis just keeps getting closer and closer by getting wins like this. Then they did beat Cloud9 on Train. This was a 16-0 victory, so very dominant stuff there. Then they played against Renegades in the best of three to go ahead and advance to the playoffs, and they actually did lose the opening match to Renegades here in overtime on Mirage, so definitely a nice little effort there from Renegades, and obviously some trouble given to Astralis, but Astralis did not struggle at all to close out this series. Since Renegades removed Overpass, they were able to pick Nuke, again adding another win to that Nuke record, and then they also won Inferno in really convincing fashion, 16-2. So once they lost the opening match to Renegades, they had two really solid victories there. In the playoffs, they played NIP first, a 2-0 for them. The first map on Mirage, again, super dominant. Again, a 16-2 score, so just absolutely destroying NIP. Dust 2 was a bit of a closer affair. It was a 16-14 game. But to be fair, Astralis always was kind of ahead. I mean, they had an 11-4 lead coming out of the first half. As they went into the second half, yes, NIP did make a bit of a comeback effort, but there was only a brief period of time where they had a lead in that game. I think they were up 14-13 at one point, but then, Astralis was pretty quick to recover. So, yeah, and a little bit of danger, I guess you could say, but still 2-0 the series, so no problem. Then, of course, they played Made in Brazil in the semifinals, where, again, they got a 2-0 victory. Now, Overpass, the opening map, was actually one of the maps this team really got challenged on outside of NIP on Dust 2, and then, of course, Renegades beating them in overtime on Mirage. That was a really good game for Made in Brazil on their T side. Started out really strong, made it really difficult on Astralis, but Astralis still were able to recover on their T side and win the map 16-14. And then they kind of wiped the floor with Made in Brazil on Inferno. Had a huge lead in the first half on their T side. Didn't struggle at all to close the game on the CT, only allowed one round, in fact, and so won that in very convincing fashion to face INTS in the grand finals, where, again, they pretty much dominated. I mean, Train, I guess, was somewhat close, but, I mean, Astralis started out with a really big lead from their CT side. There was a bit of a comeback effort, but again, Astralis never even lost a lead in this game. The closest it ever came was like 14-11, still in favor of Astralis before they closed out the game, 16-11. And then, of course, in the second map, they were able to win Inferno 16-4, so another dominant win for Astralis. I mean, at the end of the tournament, also, the entire lineup played fantastic. Maybe Glaive was a little bit lower down, but still positive overall in the KD ratio. Device was the #1 rated player in the tournament. Zippix was #2 rated in the tournament. Magus was #4, and Dupree was #6. And actually, if you really think about it, I think he would actually be #5 because I think that Zippix and Simple were tied in rating. So I think Dupree technically would actually be 5th in rating for the tournament. Device was +74, Zippix +73, Magus +61, and Dupree +43. A lot of these players were, of course, also stat leaders in many regard or in the top 5 of different categories. So, for example, Device was #2 in kills per round behind Coldzera. Zippix had the least amount of deaths per round. Device and Magus were right next to #2 and #3 in that category. Magus and Dupree were in the top 5 for assists per round. Magus was actually the highest in kill assist percentage, with Zippix at #2 and Device at #3. Then Zippix had the #2 rating and clutches ones. Alu actually had him by 1 clutch round, which I was actually kind of surprised to see, but it is indeed the facts. And then Device and Debris were also in the top 5 for opening kills per round, and Device was #1 in success in opening duels. So that's just to give you some thoughts on some of the individual greatness these players achieved throughout the major. Also, Astralis led in pretty much every team category you can think of for the major. You know, their round win percentage was 66%. The next team was Navi at 56%. When you break that down into CT side and T side, Astralis won 73% of their CT rounds. Renegades was #2 at 60%. When it comes to the terrorist side, Astralis won 59% of their terrorist rounds. #2 was Navi at 55%. On top of that, Astralis also led in percentage of rounds where they won the opening duel. They also led in 5v4 conversion, 4v5 conversion, and average damage per round with utility, as well as being really up there in the percent of deaths that they were able to trade. So again, just really topping the charts when it comes to team statistics on top of individual statistics. Also, another note to add here that was quite dominant from Astralis is that of the 10 maps they won, because they played 11 maps and only lost one of them, the overtime lost to Renegades on Mirage in their opening best of 3, the last best of 3 of the group stage, they only had 3 maps where their opponent was even able to get into double digits. So 7 of the 10 maps they won in a really dominant fashion. They also did not drop a single map in the playoffs, and this is actually the second major in a row that they've accomplished that. In fact, when you really look at the numbers, in the 2 major victories that Astralis has had with this team, they played a total of 21 maps and only dropped 2 of them. That is including the group stage games. So absolutely dominant stuff from this team when it comes to majors. Just 2-0ing everyone in playoffs. You know, this major was obviously NIT, Main, Brazil, and INTS. At the FACE IT major, it was actually FaZe, Liquid, and Navi. To now get into the greater story of greatness for Astralis, with all things tallied up, this lineup so far has been to 18 LAN events. They've made 14 finals, and they've won 11 titles, including, of course, the 2 majors, as well as the last 2 seasons of EPL and ECS, and a slew of other Tier 1 events. It's also important to note that one of Astralis's top 4 finishes and the one time they place outside of the top 4 were actually their first 2 events together. So really, the 14 finals that they've made and 11 titles that they've won have actually come in their last 16 events. And yeah, out of those 18 LAN events, they've only placed outside of the top 4 a single time, which is their first event together. So just wanted to really emphasize that because, you know, forget the titles. The fact that you're consistently placing top 4 every single event you attend is crazy enough in itself. Then when you add the titles on top of that, it's just icing on the cake at that point to really just kind of highlight how dominant this team really is and how consistent they really are in their performances. Also, before losing to Team Liquid at iPower Masters, they actually had a streak of winning 4 events in a row, and they've won 7 out of their last 9 events. Thorn actually also noted that since they won DreamHack Masters Marseille, which was their 3rd LAN together, Astralis has never lost 2 events in a row. They've always followed up a tournament loss with a tournament victory, so they've bounced back basically 5 times, and so just wanted to credit Thorn with that point and kind of highlight, because it really just goes, again, with how great this team really is. Just to get into a couple of more little fun facts about Astralis now, I mean, they led 2018 in almost all the same categories I mentioned when I was talking about the categories led in this major, you know, round win percentage, success in opening duels, 5-on-4 conversion, 4-on-5 conversion, and utility damage. They led that for the entirety of 2018, and so far are doing the same thing in 2019. Obviously, we know that all 5 of their players were ranked within the HLTV top 15 last year. Some controversy there, but I think that you could legitimately say that Device and Dupree are legit superstars and some of the best players in the world. I think Mages could certainly be considered in that regard as well. I think you could even argue they legitimately had 3 superstars because of Mages, but certainly at least Device and Dupree. And then most people would still argue that Glaive is the best in-game leader in the world and best fragging in-game leader in the world at this point. And then, yeah, Xyp9x is the best role player right now and the most clutch. You know, the amount of 1vx situations he can win you, or if you put him in a 2v4 or something with a teammate, he is so good at being able to lock down the situations. Obviously had a very memorable one against INTS on Train to close out that map in the grand finals in the inner bomb site. But there's so many more clutches you can talk about from him within the major and just, you know, at large since he's been on this team with this lineup. So far, the 18 events the Astralis have attended, Device has won 7 HLTV MVP awards, Dupree's won 1, Mages has won 2, including this major, and Xyp9x was super close to Mages at this particular major, and many people actually were thinking Xyp9x probably should have won the MVP. The problem was Device, statistically speaking, could have had it, and then Xyp9x and Mages were right there, so very difficult to call who should have gotten it. When you think about the team's overall results, They have only lost 10 best-of-3 or best-of-5 series out of around 57 that they've played so far, so they've won 82% of their series. They have now played 178 maps, and they have won 140 of those 178, so that's a 79% map win rate offline. They have only been denied double digits 8 times out of their 38 map losses, so that means they've gotten double digits or better in 170 out of 178 games played. Also, no team has a series or map advantage against this team head-to-head other than that North lineup from DreamHack Master Stockholm, which obviously is very fluky. But other than that, they maintain, head-to-head advantages against everyone in the field. Then you get into the Astralis map pool, which at this point is probably the only time a team has offline had a over 50% win rate on every single map in the pool. I think even some of the great lineups from the past, other than maybe like NIP's 87-0 or something like that, but most of that was during a 5-map pool period. And then even some of the great Fnatic lineups still had at least one map they had a negative win rate on, but not Astralis. Again, they're over 50 for every single map in the pool. Cash, they're 5-3. Obviously, they don't play it very much. They typically ban it. The only time they've even recently played it was, when they beat Navi on it back at Blast Lisbon. But before that, they hadn't played any game since May of 2018. So obviously not a map they play very often and mostly a permaban, but still 5-3 record on the map. On Dust 2, they are crazy down on this map. They are 15-2. Their only losses was a really fluky loss to North at Stockholm and then to Liquid at IY Masters. But otherwise, they have plenty of dominant wins, including 16-0 over Made in Brazil, 16-1 over Team Liquid one time. They've beaten FaZe and Navi a couple times, 16-4. So a lot of dominant wins on Dust 2. Now, Inferno is the really crazy map. I mean, I know you're thinking, well, hey, what about Nuke? But no, let me tell you about Inferno. So on Inferno, currently Astralis are 42-10. Now, you have to understand that 4 of those 10 losses were their first 4 games together, 3 of which were in their first event together. So they're actually 42-6 in their last 48 games on Inferno, and they are currently on a 15-game winning streak on Inferno. Now, most people know, as I guess I'll go ahead and say it now, that they are 29-0 on Nuke, which is the second longest map winning streak in CSGO LAN history. It's number 2 behind NIP's 32-0 on Nuke from like 2013 time period. But their Inferno, their 15-game winning streak, I had someone from Reddit actually point this out to me because I put up a thread, which I'll link in the description below, where a lot of these fun facts and stats I'm reading through I actually kind of posted in written form. And somebody named LowPick1, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, kind of pointed me in the direction of a tweet that Striker had put out a little bit earlier in February, where he was talking about the longest winning streaks in CSGO. And actually, Astralis' 15-0 on Inferno is amongst the top 5 as well on map winning streaks, and it's tied with NIP's Inferno from way back in the past as the record for most wins in a row on Inferno in the offline environment. So that is pretty damn crazy. If they win just one more Inferno game and go 16-0 on Inferno, then they will actually have the longest streak on Inferno history offline, and it would be amongst the top 5 of LAN map win streaks. Then to show up some of the other maps in the pool, Mirage, they are 20-9. They did have a small rough patch between August and November of 2018, but they've won the last 7 out of 9 times that they've played it. And then Overpass, they're 18-9, has had some problems on that map at times, but still a really good overall record with this team. And then they are 11-5 on Train. That has been an attempt to be a punish pick, and some teams have been successful in doing it, but not at this major. Obviously, they rattled Ints on it whenever they tried to go for it. They did beat Cloud9 16-0 really early in the tournament, so they're actually still showing a lot of effectiveness on that map, despite the fact that, again, it has been at times something that they have been able to be punished on. And there's plenty of other cool stats and fun facts you come up with this Astralis, but the bottom line is that this is the most complete and perhaps perfect team we've seen in CSGO history. I've talked to you about their results, their map pool, some of their individual statistics, some of the team statistics, but just from an eye test, this team is just so complete strategically. I mean, they have the most well-defined roles in CSGO right now. Glaive being the in-game leader, but also a bit of an entry fragger alongside Dupree, who's kind of the main entry rifler. Device being a very versatile and mobile opper, particularly on CT sides, but also can be effective on T sides, and he's also wicked with an AK whenever he needs to use that in 5 rifle situations. So obviously a very valuable asset to this team and typically their best player. Then you have someone like Majors, who is very good playing in individual locations where he's kind of working on his own. He has to make decisions by himself. Maybe doesn't get as much support when he's doing things in default, but then he can get into the mix and trade fragging when you need to on a set piece, and really is also very versatile in what he can do with a rifle. Then, of course, you have Zipix, the other guy who does the solo roles, more of the lurky roles, more of the support roles, and is also quite clutch because he gets put in a lot of late round situations and is able to convert a lot of those for his team, particularly at key moments when they kind of need something to kind of pump some life into them on a close out a game. He has delivered that time and time again. Tactically speaking, this team has the best default in CS as far as how they open rounds, their mid-round protocols, how they adjust to things, how they react to pressure, how they impose pressure on their opponent. And that's just on the T side. On the CT side, again, Device's mobile AWP is something that they have that not many other teams have in the same regard. The way that Device can just move across the map effortlessly, change his starting location from round to round, get a pick, and within a round, change up where he's at really quickly to make it hard for the offense to know where to look for him. And then the rest of his team is able to rotate around that in his wake of his movement to make sure there's no gaps in the defense that can be exploited. And that's just on some maps. Like Mirage in particular is one I really think of when I think of Device's mobile opping, but also certainly you could think about Overpass and Train. And then there's other maps where it's just those anchors on this team that are oh so good. You know, Mage's on Pit on Inferno, for instance, a map they're so well known for right now. I feel he just locks down that A-bomb site time and time again from the pit location. Probably the best pit player in CSGO right now. And so they have tools like that to really show up their CT sides. And then on the B side of the map, you have Zivix and Glaive, who are constantly able to at times be assertive and push down and deny banana control, but also play smart and patient in the site and buy time for rotations and just do the textbook stuff that you need to do to give yourself the best chance to win. Outside of their defaults on T side just being so sound and all their protocols being there, this team innovates. You know, even on maps like Inferno that can be kind of stale because it's just mostly based on map control at top mid and banana and then just kind of making mid-round decisions and you know, playing off rotations, Astralis finds a way to innovate. You know, some of their nade stacks that they do on Graveyard and Pit to help open up the A-bomb site, or some of the smokes and flashes that they throw over towards Moto, or how they're able to nade stack someone playing on that CT connector area that peaks down to top banana. You know, some of the things that they do is still something that catches you really off guard and is something that gives the map a breath of fresh air. But they've innovated on so many different maps tactically. They do have great set pieces. They do have the fast-paced, kind of more scrimmy plays they can use to catch you off guard, like how they kept repeatedly battering the B bomb set against Made in Brazil and Overpass in that semifinals matchup. You know, that wasn't really anything like crazy complex. It was simple utility, but they knew when to call it, and they knew how to be effective in those simple plays. And so at that point, this team can play virtually any style of CS and be effective. And not only that, when everything starts to get chaotic in mid-round 3-on-3 situations, again, they know how to communicate. They know how to work together. They know what little micro plays they need to make to be able to get that little bit of extra control or get that little bit of leeway into a site to make things happen. And so all in all, this team wins yet another major, and I've read you through all these different accomplishments they have done so far, and really it's hard to see who's going to be able to stop them in the future. Yeah, Liquid beat them at Out Power matches in the finals, but is that something that can really replicate? We'll have to wait and see. Made in Brazil showed a lot of promise in the semifinals matchup against this team, and they have the full Brazilian lineup back together. They did show some promising signs throughout this major, but they're not ready yet. We'll have to wait and see if they can become ready. FaZe has had a slew of issues. Navi is a team that can give a show when they have in the past, but they had their own flaws that they're trying to deal with right now. You know, it's so hard to know who could ever finally topple this team because there's so many issues that other teams are having to deal with, while Astralis is already locked and loaded, ready to go, and other than kind of just making sure that they stay on form and maybe they add little new things here and there, they don't really have too much to worry about. Everything is in front of them. And I mean, this major is just so great for them, especially with the pre-situation with his father, all the things that they battled through emotionally to get to this point, how they've been able to remain on top. Even when all these teams are scrambling to make adjustments to try to topple Astralis, they still can't do it. This team's just too great. Their map pool's too deep. Their players are too good. Their roles are too well defined. Their strategy is so sound, and everything is just perfect for them. You know, it really is just kind of perfection when you watch them play. It's beautiful Counter-Strike. People might call it boring, but I call it beauty. I mean, they've mastered the game. So I just want to do a video to talk about this accomplishment from Astralis and how great they are, and just kind of, you know, add to the story that is Astralis. I hope you folks enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe for more content. Catch you next time.